Bringing you some coronavirus updates from the United Kingdom. 24 hours after he was hospitalized for persistent COVID-19 symptoms, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has now been moved into intensive care. Doctors at the St. Thomas Hospital in London say that his symptoms worsened on Monday, forcing them to make the call. Reports indicate that the Prime Minister was given oxygen before being shifted to the ICU. But Downing Street is yet to confirm these reports. The government maintains that the Prime Minister has not been put on a ventilator as of now. Downing Street's messaging has also changed over the last 24 hours. Initially, they maintained that Boris Johnson would remain in charge of the British government. But the latest statement says that Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has now been asked to take over tasks wherever necessary. The Foreign Secretary has also vowed to implement the PM's directives and assured that the government is under control.
There's an incredibly strong team spirit behind the Prime Minister and making sure that we get all of the plans that the Prime Minister has instructed us to deliver to get them implemented as soon as possible. And that's the way we'll bring the whole country through the coronavirus challenge that we face right now.
Dominic Raab will now be attending all the COBRA meetings and leading Britain's coronavirus response. Crucial decisions like the need for restrictions on movement will now rest on his shoulders. And now for more on this, we are being joined by our London Bureau Chief Mandy Clark from London. Mandy, thank you so much for joining us. So tell us, what do we know about Prime Minister Boris Johnson's condition as of now?
Well, the news arrived fairly late in the evening that the Prime Minister had been taken into an intensive care unit. In a statement by Downing Street, it said that this was a precautionary measure just in case he needed a ventilator. But it did strike a surprisingly somber tone compared to a statement that was just released the day prior about him going into hospital just to do tests. He was feeling upbeat, we had heard earlier in the day, but it's clear that his condition considerably worsened, and Dominic Raab, who's the Foreign Secretary, will effectively run the country while the Prime Minister is in the intensive care unit. So certainly in the statement, it has taken a very serious and somber tone.
Right. So could you also tell us, how has the British public reacted to this news?
It's really hard to judge exactly the mood of the nation because we are all in isolation. But it will certainly be a shock to the vast majority of Britons. This man was inflappable, he's flamboyant, he was voted as Prime Minister just in December, and really it was a cult of personality that he endears. The people who voted Conservative just in this last election were areas that had never voted Conservative before, and it was really seen to the strength of his personality. So for many of those voters, they will be in complete shock that the man they voted just a few months ago is now lying in intensive care. It's a very sober and sombering thought for a nation as they're in the middle of this pandemic. I think it's fair to say that across the parliamentary spectrum and the political spectrum, everyone is hoping that he recovers and recovers very quickly.
Right, Mandy, thank you for those insights. Now, we all hope that the PM recovers quickly. Let's move on now. The United Kingdom is dealing with an escalating crisis. The number of coronavirus cases and deaths is rising. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is, as of now, in the hospital. But the people of London couldn't be bothered less. They are out in large numbers. Some are even sunbathing. Our next report tells you more.
Prime Minister. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson tested positive for the Wuhan virus 10 days ago. He made the announcement himself, delivering this video message.
I must continue my self-isolation until...
You might think that with the Prime Minister in hospital, the people of England would be worried. If you did, you were wrong. This is what the people of England are up to. These are the parks in London, dotted with people, showing utter disregard for the risks involved. They were out for a sunbathe. Police officers were seen asking them to disperse. British Health Secretary Matt Hancock earlier said that they will impose further restrictions on outdoor exercise if people did not respect the rules.
Sunbathing is against the rules that have been set out for important public health reasons. I wish I didn't have to say this, but I do, because the whole country wants to come through this crisis.
The United Kingdom's death toll is touching 5,000. Restrictions are in place, but enforcement of the rules remains a huge concern. Many have cited how Boris Johnson himself paid no heed to the precautions and ended up where he is, in hospital. Before he tested positive, he had boasted about shaking hands with coronavirus patients. That didn't work out as planned.
No, well, Victoria, I can tell you that I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody. You'll be pleased to know, and I continue to shake hands. And I think it's very important that people obviously can make up their own minds. I think Matt has said that people must make up their own minds, but I think the scientific evidence is, well, I'll hand over to the experts.
But the experts are worried. As for the people, they're confusing the lockdown with a vacation. Bureau Report, WION World is One.